In a small, quiet diner on the edge of town, siblings Joseph and Sydney meet in a corner booth. Not long ago, they pulled off a daring robbery, escaping with a staggering $7 million. Joseph has the entire sum packed in a heavy bag, and they're planning their next move. Both know one thing: they can't stick around. Sydney is desperate. She needs her share to pay off debts and provide for her young daughter, Steph. Guilt gnaws at her for not being there enough. This money, she believes, is her shot at making things right. Joseph, calm and collected, assures her he knows the perfect hiding place, somewhere no one would ever think to look. Just then, a police siren wails outside, sending panic through them. Without hesitation, they grab the bag and bolt out the back door, disappearing into the woods. The night air is cold as they push deeper into the forest, moving fast to stay ahead. To cover their tracks, they change clothes and toss the old ones into a murky swamp. Hours later, they reach the edge of a sprawling cornfield. Joseph reveals his plan: a remote, abandoned country house owned by a friend. It's their best shot at laying low until the heat dies down. But when they arrive, trouble is already waiting. 3 rowdy men are parked out front, laughing and shooting at empty bottles with rifles. Sydney, gripping a shotgun, steps forward and calls out, hoping to scare them off. When Joseph flanks them from the other side, the message is clear. Spooked, the men speed away. "We need to move fast," Joseph says as they step inside the dusty, cluttered house. But something unusual catches his eye: a large, antique clock in the living room. As they explore the house, faint police sirens pierce the night air. Sydney wants to run, but Joseph stops her, pointing to a door leading to a pantry. "This is exactly what we need." Without wasting time, Joseph hurries to the clock and starts turning its hands in a precise sequence. Sydney follows, adjusting other clocks scattered around the house. The old mechanisms creak and groan, and when they strike in unison, the siblings slip inside the pantry and shut the door behind them. Outside, thunder rumbles as lightning flashes across the sky. In the dim pantry, Joseph pulls out a worn notebook and flips through its pages. He hands Sydney an antique telephone on the wall. "Dial this number," he says. "When someone answers, say these exact words, then hang up." As police voices echo faintly outside, Sydney dials with trembling fingers, speaks the mysterious phrase, and slams the receiver down. Suddenly, the house falls eerily silent. After what feels like an eternity, Joseph cracks the pantry door open, and the change is unbelievable. The once dusty house is now spotless, warm, and welcoming. Everything looks carefully arranged, and the clocks have stopped ticking. Following the notebook's instructions, Joseph winds the clock in the living room while Sydney stares in disbelief. "I can't believe it worked," she whispers. "We're actually safe." Joseph nods but reminds her of one crucial rule: they must stay hidden for 14 days. He tries to ease her nerves. "It's not so bad," he says. "The fridge is fully stocked, and a pile of old discs offers entertainment while they wait." For now, their escape is a success, but they both know this is just the beginning. The first day is quiet. Exhausted from their escape, they rest and recover. Joseph spends the day inspecting the property for anything suspicious, while Sydney takes a warm bath and rummages through the closets. She tries on vintage dresses, savoring a rare moment of normalcy. For the first time in a while, things feel calm. By the second day, they've settled in. That evening, they cook dinner together and sit on the porch, speaking quietly as the sun sets. They count the stolen $7 million, planning how to divide and spend it once they're free. Sydney clings to thoughts of her daughter, Steph. She misses her deeply but hopes this money will give them a fresh start, and the chance to be the mother her daughter deserves. As the days stretch on, they explore the house to pass the time. Dusty portraits on the walls spark their curiosity about the home's mysterious past. For fun, they practice shooting outside with scoped rifles, and both are excellent shots. Slowly but surely, 13 days slip by. One stormy evening, Sydney grows reflective. She points to a bull hook among the antique objects, explaining its hidden value, something most people wouldn't recognize. The conversation turns personal. Joseph admits he regrets not being a better brother. He feels like he failed her when she needed him most. But Sydney isn't as hard on him. Despite everything, she believes her life hasn't turned out so badly. After all, she has a daughter who means the world to her. Touched by guilt, Joseph promises to do everything he can to make things right. Curious about their strange hideout, Sydney asks Joseph about the mysterious woman who gave him access to the house. But even Joseph doesn't fully understand it. He explains that the woman handed him the odd notebook out of pity. But beyond that, everything remains a mystery. Their conversation shifts to their parents. Sydney recalls their mother with warmth, while Joseph remembers their strict father. Together, they share a bittersweet memory of their mother playing the piano. When Sydney hears a familiar melody from an old stereo, she hums along, lost in thought. Suddenly, she turns to Joseph and pleads with him to take her back to her daughter. It's clear that the longer they stay, the more the weight of her absence crushes her. Finally, the 14th day arrives, the day they can leave. Sydney tidies the house while Joseph packs their belongings, burning any trash to cover their tracks. But as they prepare to exit through the pantry door, they find it mysteriously boarded up with a wooden plank. Words carved into the wood direct them to an old mill nearby. Panic creeps in as Sydney bolts toward the mill, and Joseph chases after her, eventually calming her down. In the mill's basement, among dusty, abandoned church pews, their flashlight reveals a chilling sight, a decomposing body carved into a wooden stand. Beside it, an eerie message warns that they are trapped in a time loop. It invites them to sign beneath the message if they understand and agree to the rules. Sydney refuses to accept it. Desperate, she flees toward the open fields. But as she crosses an invisible boundary, her body reacts violently. She vomits blood and collapses, realizing something is holding her prisoner. Joseph, shaken, drags her back to the house. When Sydney regains consciousness, despair overwhelms her. The thought of never seeing her daughter again is unbearable. Joseph reveals a chilling truth. The body in the mill is the very woman who gave them the notebook. He recognized her by the distinctive clock she once showed him. It's now clear that the house's strange powers come with a terrible price. With no other option, Joseph signs beneath the warning. Instantly, a metal safe appears out of thin air. Following the notebook's instructions, Joseph uses the numbers inside to unlock it. Inside, they find an old tape recorder and a note with precise directions. Joseph follows the steps, speaking into the recorder and closing the safe door to complete the process. Moments later, a stranger's cold, detached voice crackles through the tape. The voice knows exactly who they are and warns that they don't belong there. Growing desperate, Sydney offers to share a portion of the stolen money if it means securing their release. But the recorder falls silent. Joseph begins to suspect the voice belongs to someone from the future. Determined to escape, Sydney repeats the process, hoping for a different response. This time, the voice returns with an ominous message. It warns that the house exists within a fragile balance of mysterious forces, and their presence is disrupting it. If they don't comply, their very existence could be erased. But Joseph isn't buying it. If these forces wanted them gone, they would have already done it. Something, or someone, still needs them, and Joseph is determined to figure out why. Joseph and Sydney are trapped on a mysterious, isolated farm with no way out. A stranger tells them their only chance of escaping is to stay on the farm and kill a mysterious visitor who will arrive at an unknown time. Once they destroy the visitor's remains, these unknown forces will supposedly send them back to their own time. With no other choice, the siblings prepare for the visitor's arrival. Back inside, Sydney searches every corner of the house, closets, the refrigerator, everything. Strangely, it's fully stocked with food and alcohol. Always the practical one, she pours out the alcohol and sets up a watch position to monitor every approach to the property. Joseph suggests a watch schedule, and together they hide weapons around the yard and the old mill, staying armed and ready. While Joseph takes the first watch, Sydney scours the house again, paying close attention to the old portraits and faded photographs. When they switch shifts, Sydney takes over the watch while Joseph inspects the grounds. Days blur into months. Almost a year passes, but life on the farm remains oddly comfortable. The refrigerator never runs out of food. The house stays warm, and they have modern amenities to keep clean. But the psychological toll is building. Sydney keeps busy by digging through old newspapers, magazines, and documents she finds scattered around the house. At night, she builds campfires and practices with the bull hook, preparing for whatever is coming. One day, Sydney tells Joseph about a box of photographs she found in the mill. What she uncovered is unsettling. The images in the foyer aren't of the farm's original owners. The historical records she pieces together trace life on the property until 1955, around the end of the Korean War. After that, nothing. It's as if the place simply vanished from history. One photograph haunts Sydney, a naval officer who supposedly died on the property after falling down the stairs. She suspects this was when the mysterious forces took control, transforming the farm with modern technology like electricity, heating, and even television. But why? What is the purpose of this place? And why are she and Joseph trapped in this eerie, timeless bubble? Joseph, meanwhile, grows increasingly frustrated. He blames himself, their parents, and the unseen forces controlling their fate. To him, these powers are playing a cruel game for their own amusement. He becomes convinced that no one will ever come, and they're doomed to die in this strange, forgotten place. His despair leads to a heated argument with Sydney. He thinks she doesn't trust him and fears she believes he'll abandon her. But after a tense exchange, they reconcile. Joseph finds comfort in the identical tattoos they share, a reminder that their family is still out there, waiting. Despite his desperate attempts to make contact through the old tape recorder, the machine stays eerily silent. Then, everything changes. One day, a mysterious hooded visitor appears on the farm, watching Sydney through binoculars before moving toward the house. Just as he raises a gun to shoot her, Joseph spots him and shouts a warning. The first bullet misses, but the stranger keeps firing, forcing Joseph to dive for cover. The siblings spring into action, trying to track the intruder, but he moves like a ghost, always one step ahead. Joseph tries to retrieve a hidden weapon from the field, but the visitor sees him and fires again, pinning him down. In the chaos, the hooded figure ambushes Joseph, escalating the deadly game of cat and mouse. As the tension peaks, Sydney hears familiar music drifting from the field, a song their mother used to play. She sees a figure holding a tape player, standing over her unconscious brother. Ignoring the danger, she rushes to help, but the confrontation turns violent. Sydney is wounded and barely escapes back to the house. In a rage, She tries to break open a blocked closet, only to be interrupted by a chilling message that appears on the board, warning her to stop. At the same time, a mysterious safe materializes in the room, hinting at another layer of the twisted mystery. Meanwhile, Joseph wakes up bound in an abandoned church. The silent visitor communicates through handwritten notes, revealing he's searching for the person who killed his family. Desperate, Sydney reestablishes a connection with the unseen forces and demands answers. They warn her that forcing the closet open will kill both siblings. But before she can get more information, the connection abruptly cuts off, leaving her with even more questions. In the church, Joseph is forced to record a message confirming the intruder's death and claiming the body is outside. He begs the strangers to reconnect with Sydney so they can present the body together. While he fights to survive, Sydney prepares to rescue him. Their final confrontation with the visitor explodes into violence. Joseph seizes a chance to grab the visitor's pistol and breaks free. Back at the house, Sydney corners the intruder. After a brutal struggle, she wounds him, and finally tears away his mask, revealing the truth. To Sydney's horror, the hooded visitor is revealed to be her now adult daughter, Steph. Stunned and struggling to process the truth, Sydney hesitates, but Joseph, still trapped in survival mode, bursts in and shoots Steph. The bullet strikes Sydney as she tries to shield her daughter. As Sydney dies in Joseph's arms, Steph vanishes into the pantry, leaving him alone with his grief. Shattered but obedient, Joseph follows the stranger's orders. After burying Sydney, he waits at the mill. True to their word, they transport him to an unknown location where he finally meets the voices behind the tape recorder. A man and a woman question him about the visitor, but Joseph has no answers. Disappointed, they declare that Joseph and Sydney broke the rules, and now, he must be erased. Desperate, Joseph begs for another chance. In a final twist, the strangers grant his plea. Joseph is sent back to the first day at the cafe. This time, he confesses everything to Sydney. He's relived these events over and over, always failing to save her. The only way to break the cycle is for her to kill him, take the money, and return to her daughter. With no other choice, Sydney shoots Joseph and flees as police sirens close in. The film refuses to offer easy answers. Who are the mysterious forces controlling the farm? What do they want? And why did Sydney's daughter become the person they had to kill? In the end, the story leaves us with more questions than answers, trapping the audience in the same haunting uncertainty that consumes the characters.